Welcome friends. So in this particular lecture, we are going to provide the hands-on demo on AWS Management Console. And today's video, we will actually provide a hands-on demo on real-time data processing using Python with Kinesis, data stream, Lambda, and DynamoDB. So here is the overall architecture. You can see in the slide that we will create a bucket, and whenever we will upload a CSV file with having some data in it, a Lambda function powered by Python will be triggered automatically, which will insert the data into the Amazon Kinesis data streams. There will be another Lambda function that will consume the Amazon data Kinesis data streams, and it will automatically put the data into the DynamoDB tables. So we will have two Lambda functions. One is for producer and the other one is for consumer. So let's get started and jump to the AWS Management Console. So friends, this is our AWS Management Console. First, we will create a S3 bucket. So let's go to this S3 bucket and let's create one bucket. And we will provide the name as Streaming Data Learning Live Demos as the bucket name. And we will literally keep everything as it is, and we will create the bucket. All right. So our bucket is created. Now we need to set up the Kinesis data stream. So we need to choose the Kinesis data stream from service list. And there we're going to create the Kinesis data stream. The Kinesis data stream is by default selected. We can create the Kinesis data stream. Now we're going to create a Kinesis data stream like taxi tree, and we will keep this as on demand. So on demand is basically going to give you maximum 200 Mbps write capacity and 200,000 records per second to put, as well as it is going to give you the maximum read capacity of 400 megabytes per second up to 2 default consumers. We're going to create the data stream now. Now our data stream is created. Let's grab the ARN of this data stream. Now let's create the DynamoDB table. So let's open it a new tab and create 3 tables. We will create 3 tables, and name of the tables will be high value trips, trip duration analysis, and distance to fare ratio. So first we need to create the table high value trips, and we're going to keep each table will have trip ID as partition key, and there is no short keys. And this trip ID, let's create as string, and we will create the DynamoDB standard class, and we will use the on-demand provisioning of throughput. And we are fine with DynamoDB owned encryption key, and we will create the table. Similarly, we will create other table like sleep duration analysis. It will have the same partition key trip ID as string. We are fine with DynamoDB standard table class, anti-man provisioning, and rest are fine. We're going to create the table. And finally, we're going to create the table called distance to fair ratio. And again, trip ID would be our partition key. DynamoDB standard, anti-man, and let's create that table as well. Now we are having three tables: high value trips, trip duration analysis, and distance to fair ratio. Once our DynamoDB is provisioning these three tables, let's jump to the IAM console. We will create a couple of policies and roles. Let's go to the policy and let's create the policy named Kinesis write record policy. Let's go to this JSON editor and we can keep this as our policy. So basically it will allow to put the records in Kinesis data stream. So now we have to grab these Kinesis data stream taxi tree, and we are going to provide these ARNs over here. And we are going to keep the name as Kinesis write record policy, and description will be the same. And let's create this policy. Once the policy is done, we are going to create one role, which is for a Lambda. This is definitely for the producer Lambda role. So we're going to create a role which we have created for Kinesis write record policy. And along with that, we are going to provide the S3 access. So it should be S3 read-only access. As well as we're going to keep the Lambda execution role so that will allow the Lambda to write into the CloudWatch logs. So right now we have three policies, and definitely we need to provide one name. So the cube name is Lambda producer Kinesis role, and let's create a role. Now our producer role is ready. Now let's create the role for consumer Lambda function. So again, a policy, and let's go to this JSON editor, and let's have this policy. So that will basically allow the consumer Lambda process to get the Kinesis records and having all these Kinesis services to list and describe. So here as well, we need to provide the ARN of Kinesis data stream. And let's create this policy. we need to provide one policy name, name it as Lambda Kinesis read policy, and we can say create policy. Another policy we need to create for putting the data into the DynamoDB table, and we can create another policy, and let's go to this JSON editor and keep this as for all resources, put, batch, update, and delete. Now let's give a name of this policy, and maybe we can say Lambda Dynamo write policy. Description can be the same, and we can create the policy. Now for the consumers, we are having two policies created. Now let's go to this role and create a role for this consumer process. And that should be crafted for Lambda. And let's go to this next, and we can choose this DynamoDB write policy and Kinesis read policy. And along with that, we can provide the Lambda execution policy to write the logs into the CloudWatch. And we can give some name like consumer role, and we can create the role. All right. Now, let's go to this S3 bucket, and let's go to this permission, and let's have the bucket policy be edited, and we can provide one policy over here so that our Lambda producer Kinesis role can write into these streaming data learning like demos S3 bucket. Now we can grab these roles here in, so maybe we can go to this producer Kinesis role, because that is going to read the data from the S3 bucket, and we can provide the exact ARN of this particular role. And we can say, okay, so bucket policy got updated. And now let's go to these Lambda service, and we will create the Lambda functions for producer and consumers. So first, let's create the function for producer. And we're going to create a Python. We will change the role, and we will say, and we will keep producer role for this Lambda function, and let's create the function. So here we are going to provide a Lambda function which will actually read the data from the S3 bucket, and it is having a couple of functions to convert the string to integer or float and to correct the data type. So basically, whenever you are going to upload the taxi details data, it may have different data types instead of integer or floats or the correct one. So we are going to convert them to proper integer value or float value. And then the Lambda function will be triggered and it will read the data from this S3 bucket and it will grab the file name and the bucket name from the event, and then it will get the object from this bucket. And for this object, for this S3 object, it is going to read the data and it will actually convert them with proper data type. And then it will push the data into this Kinesis data stream. So practically, this producer Lambda function will read the data from S3 bucket and it will put the data into the Kinesis data stream. Now, let's deploy this function first. And then let us change the configuration. So let's edit this and we can say keep 10 minutes of its runtime, and as well as we are going to keep the trigger as S3, and we can choose the bucket as streaming data loading like demos, and we acknowledge, and we're going to add the trigger into the Lambda function. So whenever there is a put event will occur in this S3 bucket, the Lambda function will be automatically triggered. Now let's build another function for the consumer. So maybe we can say consumer Lambda. Again, we are going to use the Python code and we are going to change the role as consumer role. And let's create the function. So this time, this function will actually read the data from Kinesis data stream, and then it will actually put the data into DynamoDB table. So what exactly it is doing, it is having three functions. One is going to calculate the trip duration. One is going to generate the trip ID and calculate distance to pair ratio. And each of the functions are basically putting the data and reading the data from these tables. And finally, it is going to put the data into these DynamoDB tables. So all three tables will get the data through this Python code. So let's deploy this code. And again, we are going to change the configuration of runtime. We can increase it to 2 minutes. And we're going to save it, as well as we're going to keep the trigger as Kinesis data stream. And we are having the taxi tree as a Kinesis data stream. So whenever there is a new data will be added in the Kinesis data stream, automatically it will be triggered and then it will be insert data. It will insert the data into the DynamoDB table. All right. Now we are ready. We can use one CSV file to upload into the S3 bucket, and we will see how the entire system works. Now, this is our taxi trips data, and we are going to use this particular data having a numerous columns and rows, almost 5,000 rows we do have in this particular sample file, and there are a number of columns which is having different type of column data type, and most of these columns are either float or integer, and we are having the date time columns as well. So let's upload this file to our S3 bucket. So let's go to this S3 console. Let's go to this bucket and upload the taxi trips file. Now our data is uploaded. Now let's go to this Lambda function. Let's open this Lambda in a new tab, and there let's open this producer Lambda function. And we can go to this monitoring section, and we can watch in CloudWatch log. So we can see one new log stream is generated, and we see that we started to push the data into the Kinesis data stream. Let's go to this Kinesis data stream, and let's go to this data viewer, and let's choose the shard, and let's get the records, and we can see the records are coming, and we can change the shard and try to get the records, and we can see the records are coming into the data stream. Now let's go to this DynamoDB table. Let's go to this DynamoDB table, and we will see whether we can see the records over there as well or not. So we are having three tables, and let's pick one of them, and let's click this get live count, and you can see the records are coming in. So now these records are coming into it through the consumer Lambda function. So consumer Lambda function is continuously monitoring this Kinesis data stream. Whenever there is a new data comes into the data stream, it is basically automatically triggered, and then it is constantly inserting the data into the DynamoDB table. Also, we are having other two tables. We can definitely check the distance to fare ratio, and we can check it's almost 5,000 now. So this is how the entire system is running. Whenever there is a new file comes into the S3 bucket, the producer Lambda function is generating the data and inserting the data into Kinesis data stream. And the other consumer Lambda function is reading the Kinesis data stream, and it is putting the data into DynamoDB table. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it is an exciting video for AWS demonstration. And we will see you in the next lecture. Till then, bye and be safe. Thank you for watching this video once again.